After almost a week of silence, President Biden finally spoke out on the object shot down by the military this week. Watch.
We don't yet know exactly what these three objects were, but nothing right now suggests they were related to China's spy balloon program or that they were surveillance vehicles from any other country. These three objects were most likely balloons tied to private companies, recreation, or research institutions. I expect to be speaking with President Xi, and I hope we're going to get to the bottom of this. But I make no apologies for taking down that balloon.
Well, why would we even consider making any apologies? California Congressman Darrell Issa reacted on Twitter saying, quote, "A military officer reached out to me tonight. Biden's speech on the balloons was all lies." During the briefing, Biden snapped at a reporter over a question that the reporter asked about his family's influence peddling. The president refused to say if he was compromised by China. Here now, former House Speaker, Fox News contributor, and the author of Defeating Big Government Socialism, Newt Gingrich, is with us this hour. Newt, your thoughts on all of this? I guess the first question I have is, why is it that Biden is constantly on his heels defending the U.S.-China relationship? Why would anyone think that he's supposed to apologize? They sent the surveillance balloon to us.
Look, I think that, first of all, Biden doesn't have a clue about the nature of the Chinese threat. I think that he is so totally compromised by what he and his son have done. You know, Biden himself has said he spent something like 88 hours with Xi Jinping over the years. At a speech in Philadelphia, he said he'd probably spend more time with Xi Jinping than any other foreign leader. But it's obvious he didn't learn anything. And just take the example of these balloons. So we were told they couldn't shoot down the Chinese spy balloon over the United States because they were really worried about collateral damage. Suddenly, they can shoot down these other three things, and they're not worried about collateral damage. Now, I mean, you look at all this. First of all, it is a huge comment on the incompetence of the senior American military. It was the job of the North American Air Defense, when they first picked up that balloon outside of Alaska before it penetrated, they should have shot it down then. And that system is very clear. It's directly from the commander of North American Air Defense, NORAD, to the Secretary of Defense, to the president. Nobody else is in the middle. So they didn't do anything. Then again, and frankly, I don't think they would have ever told us about the Chinese balloon if the newspaper in Montana hadn't published a picture of it. And at that point, they were so embarrassed that they didn't know what to do. They had all this totally phony argument. I mean, if the Defense Department actually thought shooting down a Chinese balloon over Montana would cause collateral damage, you need to replace every person in the chain of command, because that's a level of incompetence that makes Afghanistan look like a success. So you have all of this stuff going on simultaneously. And then you have Biden, who I think on a good day walks around, and I'm not sure he actually lies. I think he believes whatever he says. It just has no relationship to truth or to reality. And I find that very frightening. I mean, the only thing that comforts me about Biden as president is the thought of Kamala Harris as president. And at that point, I think, okay, Biden may be out to lunch, but at least he's not totally irrational.
And honestly,
I really think this is a sobering, frightening time, and I think people need to realize how dangerous what we're going through is.
It's true. We're living in really dangerous times right now, and I think you're right. I think that the Congress will not move to impeach Joe Biden because they're afraid of number two. They don't want to get into that situation. Meanwhile, we know that Donald Trump saw China as an adversary from day one. Remember when he had Xi Jinping at Mar-a-Lago in 2017, and he basically dropped the bomb during their chocolate cake moment when they were having dessert, saying, hey, by the way, we're sending strikes to Syria right now because they used chemicals on their people. Utah Senator Mitt Romney says President Trump will most likely be the GOP nominee in 2024. He's still vowing not to support Trump if that's the case, but he's admitting that that's what it looks like. The Wall Street Journal is reporting on a fundraising email sent out by the former president. He says that the GOP should, quote, master the Democrats' own game of harvesting ballots in every state that we can, says President Trump. What are your thoughts? It feels like Trump is recognizing that the Republicans have failed when it comes to understanding and dealing with mail-in voting and the potential fraud that exists there. and correcting it. Newt, do you agree with Romney, number one, that Trump will be the nominee? And number two, what about his change in stance on mail-in ballots?
Well, I mean, first of all, I do agree with Mitt Romney that clearly the front runner is Donald Trump. All things being even, he probably will be the nominee, although I think Governor DeSantis is very formidable. And I think there's a very large block of people willing to give a lot of money to stop Trump. So this is not over, but you'd have to say that President Trump is the front runner and the most likely nominee. I also think what's always been impressive about Trump, because he's not a professional politician, he can actually look with a cold business eye at reality, at the facts. It is a fact that if we don't compete on ballot harvesting, we're going to lose. It's a fact that if we don't learn how to campaign earlier, since people are voting earlier, we're going to lose. It makes no sense to save your money till October if people start voting in early September. And at least in one state, 60% of the people had voted before the Republican advertising campaign reached its peak. So I think what you'll see with Trump, and he's come up with a series of videos, some of which have very powerful and profound ideas. He's proposed, for example, that parents ought to be allowed to hire and fire the principals of the school their children go to. Well, I just did a podcast with an investigative reporter from Baltimore. Baltimore City schools have 23 schools where 0 students out of 2,000, 0 could do math. Now, those children ought to be saved, and if that means that the parents get to take control of the school instead of the teachers' union and the bureaucrats, I am for whatever experiment it takes to save the children. And Trump is providing real issue leadership in those areas. So I think we're at the beginning of a long and I think very interesting campaign.
Yeah, it's going to be something to watch for sure. All right, Newt, we're happy you're with us the whole hour. Stay right there. We've got a lot more to come. We'll be right back, everybody. Stay with us.